Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to Daily Pali Reading. Today, our passage is the beginning of the Buddha's response to Vacchagotta's question about why various speculative views arise in the world. Our passage is Rupe ko vaccha aññana, Rupa samudaye aññana, Rupa nirodhe aññana, Rupa nirodha gaminiya patipadaya aññana. Due to ignorance of the body, vaccha. Due to ignorance of the origin or arising of the body. Due to ignorance of the cessation of the body. Due to ignorance of the path which leads to the cessation of the body. So a couple things grammatically here. Aññana. When we see aññana, it might appear that that could be some kind of feminine noun. In fact, aññana is neuter. So, and you can look this up under ñanang in the Pali English dictionary. Ñana having to do with knowledge, knowing. Aññana would be not knowing, or I should say aññanang would be not knowing, ignorance. So knowing that aññanang is neuter, aññana must then be the ablative singular. And of course, ablatives typically have a sense of separation, something like gamma, gammang, gacchati, to go from one village to another. But here, our ablative is actually being used as a way of indicating the cause. Due to, because of, due to or because of. So due to ignorance, and ignorance of what? Rupe. Now rupe is the locative singular, neuter, of rupang. Rupang here means the body. It could mean matter or material more generally, but here it means our physical bodies, or our physical body. The reason we would know this, just seeing this little piece of text, it would not be clear. As we go on, we will see that the other four khandas are mentioned. So Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnanang. And also this sutta comes from a section of the Samyutta Nikaya dealing with the five khandas. So just by this little sentence alone, or this little passage, we wouldn't necessarily know. But taking into account what comes after and where this is situated, we can understand that the Buddha is talking about the physical body, human beings' physical bodies. I think the Pali English dictionary says that aññana takes the locative. We in English sort of would use the genitive, and that might be what we would expect. Ignorance of, not, literally this would be something like ignorance in. But if you look up Duracell, and I'm sorry if I'm mangling his name, I've never really heard anyone pronounce his name, his grammar of Pali, he mentions that if you look under his section on cases and specifically on the locative, he says that the locative is sometimes used in place of other cases, and often it's used in place of the genitive. So it could be that something like that is going on as well. So it's something that arises from time to time, that the cases don't seem to make the same kind of sense. Very often they do, but sometimes, as in this case, we might have to dig just a little deeper, or just understand that the Pali is using, expresses something slightly differently than we would in English. So the Buddha mentions that it's due to ignorance of the body, due to ignorance of the samudaya, the arising or the origin of the body, due to ignorance of the nirodha, the cessation of the body, and then due to ignorance of, and this is a little longer, due to ignorance of the patipadaya, the path, like the Majjhima Patipada, the path Rupa Nirodha Gaminiya, the path leading to Gaminiya, the cessation of the body. It should be noted here that Ajnana, as we said, takes the locative, and the locative that it's taking is the Patipadaya. Then when we go over to Rupa Nirodha Gaminiya, this looks very similar in form, Gaminiya. In this case, it is the dative. We have our ignorance of, expressed in the locative, Patipadaya, which leads to the Gaminiya, Rupa Nirodha. This statement is clearly, I don't want to say a reformulation, but it takes the exact same form as the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. We can see in the Four Noble Truths that it's idang dukkhang, idang dukkha samudayang, idang dukkha nirodhang, idang dukkha nirodha gamini patipadaya, or patipada. I try to make these daily Pali readings as brief as possible, so I'm going to leave that matter to you, dear listener, to sort of investigate. One thing that I would say about this that I think is really interesting is that when the Buddha is talking about the ajnana, or the ajnanang, our ignorance, he's not talking about our lack of knowledge. He's not talking about this in a scientific sense. I think we all have a knowledge that our bodies, we can see children. We know that we were children. We see people aging and dying. We know that will happen to us. And we can understand even the molecular makeup of bodies. That's not actually what the Buddha is talking about, in my humble estimation. And I've not looked into the commentary. I don't dig into the commentaries a whole lot, although I think they're very interesting. Here, the Buddha is talking about how our ignorance itself creates our bodies. We mentioned a little while back about the paticca samuppada and how the first link in that chain of causes is avidya, a synonym for this word we have here, so that for the Buddha, our ignorance really gives birth to the world, not simply the external world, but the world that is also our body, our physical body, which we could consider to be part of the external world. So that's where we will leave things today. In our next reading, we will continue with the Buddha's reply, and we will start to notice a characteristic feature of Pali, of the Pali Canon, some might say an infamous feature, which is that of repetition. Though for us, it's going to make things easier to read the rest of this sutta. Peace, everybody.